However, the arms race did prevent war in Europe. Neither side was willing to provoke the other to the point of using atomic weapons, which is why in the Berlin blockade and airlift, neither side provokes the other to the point where it might be a possibility. Right? The USSR has huge numbers of conventional troops on the ground in Europe and could have easily overrun Western Germany, but didn't, because they feared an American nuclear retaliation, and also once NATO is created, they fear that NATO partners getting involved. So we've got NATO being created in April 1949. That's your first formal military alliance, and it's designed to defend the West from communism. Not long after that, you get Comecon being created. Okay, now Comecon is the communist equivalent of the Marshall Plan. It's the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, right? And it's aimed to encourage the economic development of Eastern Europe. They're trying to minimise American influence in Eastern Europe, keep the benefits of economic recovery in the Soviet sphere. And countries that were satellite states are part of this, and they are controlled, again, their economies are controlled by the USSR. We've just gone through this. The Russians test the ordinary atomic bomb in 1949, then both countries have the hydrogen bomb, and the arms race keeps the peace. The Warsaw Pact in 1955 is the communist equivalent to NATO. It's created in response to West Germany joining NATO, and you've now got two formal military alliances. Now, key death, 1953, Stalin dies. Stalin was a brutal dictator responsible for millions of deaths, and people are expecting change. And that is the final topic for key topic 1, the Hungarian uprising of 1956. So let's recap. So Hungary under Stalin, well, the Hungarians lost land. Their coal, oil and wheat is shipped to the USSR on favourable terms for the USSR, but not for Hungary. So again, the economy is being controlled to limit Hungary's potential. Cominform operates a reign of terror, removing anybody who they think isn't loyal. It's very violent. And he appoints Rákosi as dictator. In 1956, Khrushchev, the new leader, gives his secret speech in which he wants to separate himself from Stalin and suggests that there's going to be changes through de-Stalinisation. But nothing seems to change, and the Hungarians have had enough. And in July 1956, Rákosi is removed from power. Rákosi has been totally loyal to the USSR. He's allowed the secret police a reign of terror. Lots of people have been arrested, imprisoned, executed. There's very little freedom. Okay, so how did Khrushchev respond to all of this? Oh, sorry. First of all, underpinning all of these, anger at lack of change was bad harvests, fuel and bread shortages, and demonstrations. And the Hungarians put forward their list of demands, things they want to change. So they want the free elections, they want freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of worship. They do not want the secret police to be running their country. So Khrushchev's response, he appoints a man called Nagy. Now Nagy has previously been Prime Minister. He seems more liberal, more free, more open to change. He's still a communist, but he's willing to bring in some of these changes. And Khrushchev agrees to withdraw the Red Army to try and stabilise the situation. Now Nagy introduces those reforms that the protesters wanted, who were out on the streets, the students who were demonstrating. He says he is going to end a one-party state, he is going to introduce all those freedoms, and he is going to develop links with the West. The crucial point comes when he says Hungary is going to leave the Warsaw Pact. At this point, alarm bells start ringing for Khrushchev. The Hungarians are encouraged because the Americans seem to be suggesting that they will help the Hungarians via broadcasts made on Radio Free Europe, and obviously the Truman Doctrine also seemed to suggest that they would provide support to any country that was trying to liberate itself from communism. So what happens next then? How does Khrushchev stop Nagy? Well, he's really concerned at the announcement that Hungary is going to leave the Warsaw Pact, and he's concerned that Nagy is trying to get the UN to recognise them as a neutral country. The Warsaw Pact thing is vital though, because if Hungary leaves the Warsaw Pact, which has only just been set up in 1955 as a military alliance, then other countries might try and withdraw and the whole Eastern Bloc could collapse. So what does he do? He sends 200,000 Soviet troops back into Hungary with at least 1,000, some estimates are much higher, tanks to go in and take back control. And there are violent clashes on the streets. The people who've been protesting fight back using guerrilla tactics, and a lot of people die, a lot of people are rounded up and imprisoned, and the freedoms that Nagy has introduced last about 4 days. And those troops and tanks have gone in support of Kadar. Now, Kadar was one of Nagy's ministers, but he broke away from Nagy and set up an alternative government when Nagy said Hungary was leaving the Warsaw Pact because he thought that was too extreme. So eventually the Soviets, they easily defeat the protesters with their, weapons and tanks. The international reaction to all of this, and let's bear in mind about 2,500 killed, 20,000 wounded, 200,000 flee. Nagy is executed, though the US didn't provide military support, only food and medical aid. The UN condemned the invasion but did nothing, and fundamentally the satellite states are discouraged from copying. Nagy has been executed. He thought he'd got safe passage out of the country, but he left the Yugoslavian embassy and is then arrested and put on trial and found guilty. And then his death sends out a huge message to the other satellite states. They're not going to copy. They feel let down by the Americans, who are busy dealing with a crisis in Suez. The UN doesn't seem to do anything, and Khrushchev, supporting Kadar, gets the country back under control, and the Soviet army is used to restore that control. And there's some images of what happened. But essentially there's not another attempt by a satellite state to overthrow the USSR really until the Prague Spring in the late 1960s. So you can see that we've gone from a grand alliance working together to defeat Hitler, through the three conferences where agreements and tensions are apparent, to communism and capitalism clearly coming into opposition through the Iron Curtain speech and the telegrams, the creation of the satellite states, the American response with the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan, then the flashpoint over Berlin, the creation of NATO, the arms race running throughout all of this, and then the flashpoint over Hungary.